I just thought we could do like a little like bonus episode on what happened? What are you excited about? What does it mean? Because, it's been a couple of years, I think. Last time we talked with you and Nicola Sherritt, Liz Truss was still Prime Minister. Yeah, it was like in that very
Well,
short
if
period of
Liz
time.
Truss was Prime Minister, then it must have been in a very short window.
It was a
So,
very short window, I think, where she was racing against the lettuce to see who could survive longest. Or maybe it was just after she had been defeated by lettuce. Yes, but now here we are. The
yeah,
Tories have
having watched this year's Portillo moment, which was Liz Truss losing her seat and the most awkward video ever.
well,
Do I need to add in bits?
you'll have to
Yes, I'm going to
describe
say, do I need to add things for the?
both what a Portillo moment is and what the Liz Truss moment is, because this is going to be like explain what just happened in the UK election, why this election was so significant for people who don't know anything about the British elections, right?
Yeah, so I think
What was so
so.
important about this election?
Yeah, we've had 14 years of Conservative Party, which are the right-wing party in the UK. Oh, yeah, relatively, well, actually, and I suppose part of it is over this time they have become more right-wing,
Mm,
and I think we, especially with UK politics, there tends to be a bit that after you've done about 10 years, things start to get tired.
mm.
The good ministers you have at the start have done 10 years, and it's a really hard job being a minister.
And
Yeah,
like a decade,
in
yeah.
British politics. So they tend to retire, they tend to leave, they tend to want to do other things. And so, especially by the time it's been 14 years, you haven't got your A team anymore, and you've
Right.
run out of ideas. And so I think the whole country, well, not the whole country, but a good amount. Yeah, well, actually, if you look at the polling, it's 75% of the people that voted didn't want the current government in.
Mm.
Um, And if I talk to my friend, it's been very noticeable. And even if you read about, the guys who are actually in there, the Conservative people, the MPs, they weren't enjoying themselves. They were having a miserable time as well because they know it's coming to an end. They know that nothing's happening. They just spend their time fighting on themselves. So it's been a very, it's every most people I know, it's just relief that it's over.
Finally. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been noticeable that there, I mean, someone here in the US asked me a couple of days ago, oh, did they call for this election or how did this election come about? And I was pointing out that everyone's known this election was coming and it's kind of also been known that the Tories were going to lose. So it was kind of a weird situation of Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, the Conservative Prime Minister. Basically, he knew he was calling an election and he knew that he was calling for his own demise, and it all kind of felt inevitable. So
Yeah, but it's one of those weird things about the UK political system that the party in power gets to call when the election happens. So it's
right,
not like the US
exactly.
one, which is you know
Exactly.
every 4 years in November in the US you can have any presidential thing, or
Hmm.
in France, lots of countries where they have it that set. Whereas in the UK there is a maximum time, but
Well,
not but so they could have gone for another 6 months. They
but
could have
it
called
still
an
would have
election.
been inevitable. People knew
Yeah,
that the Conservatives were going to lose. That was the
yeah,
point. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I think a lot of it, when you read around it, is actually the part of the reason I think they might have called it is that, well, we're going to lose anyway. So
Right,
what's the point in dragging it out for another 6 months when,
right.
frankly, even the MPs, the members of parliament and the ministers themselves are just tired and miserable. They're not
Yeah.
enjoying it. Nothing's happening. They're not getting anything done, just fighting among themselves. What's the point?
Everyone knows they're going to lose. I
Yeah.
mean, it must have been such a strange. I keep thinking
But
about it. It
but
must
you
have been
could
such a
understand
strange situation to be in.
well, it's like that you could understand if you thought, well, we're going to lose in 6 months a year, but here's some stuff we can get done.
Right, exactly.
But it's for the last, at least couple of years, they haven't actually done anything. So,
Right.
and that I think that's the big thing when you talk about like so there's the 2019 election where the Tories came in on a landslide. So they had
Mm,
like an 80
mm,
seat majority. And the only thing they've done with it that anyone can think of, remember, is
mm.
they completed a Brexit deal, but they completed a Brexit deal that frankly was awful.
Right.
And everyone is looking at it having, so the one thing they could say, well, we got Brexit done. And everyone's looking at, well, stuff isn't coming in the country
Yeah.
as easily. There's
Yeah.
barriers to trade put up.
Yeah.
When I go and stand in a queue, I've got to stand in a queue with my passport and and it takes
Yeah.
ages. My
Yeah.
fresh vegetables aren't coming in; they're rotting at the ports. So
Mm,
the one thing you're saying, that you can't send stuff to Northern Ireland. So the one thing that they have done with
mm.
this massive majority has made our life worse.
But and
And then
again,
since then, and
yeah.
then you have all the sleaze and the partying,
Mm,
and that got replaced by Liz Truss, which then, and then so then Sunak came in and managed to stabilize things a bit. But you sit there and go, what's his achievement? That he wasn't as bad as the previous guys.
exactly.
At
Exactly.
least he wasn't sleazy, and at least he wasn't blatantly incompetent. Wasn't particularly competent. He's not very good at politics.
But there
But
was
but
this,
that's the thing. There's just this relief that after 4 years of 4 or 5 years, where the only thing that you can think of they've achieved is stuff that's made your life worse.
right, right. Well, that was the whole
Whilst
problem with Brexit, though, because the only, like, okay, you promised you achieved on the thing that you said you were going to do, but the thing you said you were going to do was inevitably going to make everyone's life worse.
but even and I say that is someone who very much against Brexit. There were ways of doing Brexit that could have been better.
Mm,
It's
mm.
the it's the Brexit that they chose was an absolutist one,
Right, right,
where
exactly.
even when it would have been beneficial for us to have alignment, or
Mm,
they chose not to. So a simple but actually quite serious example is chemicals regulation in the UK.
right.
There's no reason why we couldn't have adopted EU chemical regulations.
Mm, mm,
And because we haven't, every chemical that comes into the country, so this is, compounds for paint, or
right.
you're trying to make something, or any, all these little things that go into stuff.
Super tiny stuff, yeah.
So, every one of them, if you want to use it in the UK, has to be tested to UK standards.
Oh, yeah.
Now, but if you're selling it anywhere else, you will also have tested it, to EU standards. And basically, the UK standards are the same as the EU standards, except you now have to do it twice. So it's twice
Mm,
expensive. So all that
mm,
happens
mm,
is actually there's lots of compounds. The guys going, it's just not economically worth us
mm,
testing this
mm,
compound in the
mm,
UK.
mm.
So things you need just disappear off the shelves. They could have chosen like that. And veterinary standards are the same.
Yeah,
It's like, you sit there and say, well, we're going to have our own veterinary standards. Well, all that really means is we can't import stuff from the EU as well easily, and we
yeah.
can't export stuff off. So, yeah, something like veterinary standards isn't going to affect
Mm,
whether or not I can import stuff from the US or Australia or New Zealand, because they're very, very far away. So I'm not getting as
right,
much food from them.
right,
Um, whereas I am buying lots of food from the Netherlands.
right.
So again, it's this thing where if you've been pragmatic about it and been sensible about it, you could have, and not been absolutist about it. You could have done something that didn't impact the UK whilst still giving you some of the benefits of Brexit around having control and regulation.
So do you think, so there's definitely this sense, what I'm hearing is there's a sense of like just relief and weariness that drove this. But I'm not, I mean, is there from abroad, from afar, I've never quite got the feeling of what Starmer's policies are and whether there's a feeling of hope or excitement around what Labour's going to do. I feel like my sense, looking at it from a distance, has always been they knew they were going to win. Why are they not being more um, optimistic? Why are they not being more like, oh, we could do something like, ambitious, maybe? I get the
Because,
caution, but still, it's
well,
like when it's so obvious you're going to win, why not
yeah,
do
but
more?
because I think and I expect this might not come across to a lot of people because they're probably not politics nerds like me and don't listen as closely.
Mm,
It's been really interesting just in the last day, once Starmer's won,
mm, mm.
seeing the change in him, and
Okay.
I was listening to lots of the news stories yesterday about why did he go into politics. He went into politics because I think, so there's always been spoiled about that. Formerly, he was a civil servant. He was the head of the CPS, the prosecution service in the UK,
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
and he was there when austerity started. They first started having
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
cuts,
Yeah.
and he was so upset by seeing that these cuts were doing things that he could see were detrimental. He had
Yeah.
to implement them because that was his job as the head.
Right. Right. Right.
But he knew that they were wrong. He knew they were going to damage things. He knew they were going
Mm,
to make
mm,
things
mm.
worse. And he got really pissed off by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
and so but he is a civil servant who
Mm.
he has a background in that. He just wants basic competence to come back.
Right,
And I
right.
think that's the interesting thing where again, when I talk to friends of mine who work in the public sector, or particularly one, I've got some friends who work in the civil service. The thing that most annoys them about the current government, the past government,
Mm.
was the basic lack of competence.
Right, right, right.
It's not just that they didn't have any ideas, but even where they did have ideas, they couldn't implement them because they were just not good at their jobs.
Right, right,
And
right,
this is the
right.
point I think I said at the beginning about, after 14 years, the guys who were good at the
Have,
start when you first started off with Cameron,
have
they've
retired.
worked out, they've retired, they've gone on,
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
left. And all you're left with with the people, there's a reason they weren't given a job 14 years ago.
Right, yes, yeah, yeah.
Because frankly they weren't very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and and even just recent, it's only been a couple of days. You can see the guys; they've already seem to be more on top of their brief and understand what
Mm,
they're saying.
mm, mm.
Um,
Well, it was something
yeah,
noticeable about, I heard people talking about how Starmer has, he came in and the people who've been given positions are people who've already been doing them for a long time, rather
yeah,
than awarding positions like, oh, congratulations, you're my best buddy, and like giving them out as patronage things. It's like, oh no,
yeah,
you've been working on education for the last few years, you're going to continue working on education
yeah.
because you know how
Well,
to
well,
do that, you know.
it's the one place where the Conservatives have probably done well. Is in education.
Oh, I'm
And
just
it's
using
very
that as an
noticeable.
example,
No, no, no,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but,
but
but that's
still.
such a good example because that's the one place where you've had one minister who's been
Oh,
in
interesting.
place
Yeah,
for ages,
yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone really respects him. He really knows his brief, and he just gets
Mm.
stuff done. I can't remember his name. I can't even remember his name. That's how well known he is.
Right.
What I do know though is he's been in that job pretty much since Cameron stayed, and he
Mm.
just gets stuff done. And every now and again, like
It's
I think Johnson
funny,
tried to
isn't
fire
it?
him.
It's that
Yeah, but
competence.
people would fire him. Yeah, people would fire him and go, oh no, I'm going to give, like you said, I'm going to give this job to someone else. And 6 months later, he's back in the job again
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because he gets the job done. So he's been in and out a couple of times.
yeah,
We
yeah.
just but prisons, I think, is a good example where like the prisons minister, it changed every 6 months.
Mm, mm,
Unsurprisingly, the
mm.
prisons are in an absolute mess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the minister's just got time to get his feet under their feet under the table. Well, it's the Tories, his feet, their feet under the table, get on top of their brief, um, understand, maybe start making some changes, and they reshuffle it out again.
Mm, mm, mm.
Um,
So in a
housing's the same, the health, health, in everything. It's just nothing's happened apart from Brexit for since
mm, mm.
2019.
So in a sense, what you're hoping for is just basic competence, and that is the hope of what will make the difference. Like having some grown-ups in the room, people who know what they're doing, getting things organized, getting things back on track.
Yeah,
It's not
but
necessarily, you don't necessarily need at the moment a big flagship like, oh, this is the new fancy thing we're going to do. It's just like, we're going to be organized. We're going to be,
but but I think but there's also the point that one of the reasons I think people actually, most people understand that at the moment the country doesn't have a lot of money. It hasn't had lots of growth.
yeah, yeah.
But again, if you want to have that growth and you want to have that again takes competence.
Mm, mm,
Because, for example, one of the things that really holds back UK is planning reform. Now, to
mm,
put that
mm.
through is hard and complicated, and it's really boring technical stuff.
Yeah,
You've got to sit down, you've got to work out exactly how to design thousands of pages worth of legislation
right.
and guidance, go through those and work out different structures, different people. That's hard and boring, but it needs to be done because until we've got
Mm,
that, you know, you can't build the infrastructure you can't build the electricity pylons you need, you can't build the power station, you can't build the roads, you can't put in the internet you need, you can't build the houses where people want to live, you can't.
mm,
So
mm,
where I live in Cambridge, there are not enough roads, not enough houses, not enough
mm, mm.
labs. You can't get anywhere in public transport. We've pretty much anything that you want for physical infrastructure hasn't really happened for
Right,
and
right, right.
everyone knows it's like it's the fastest growing parts of the country, and every time I go to networking events, the big thing people remember you can't find the right people because there's no houses to put them in,
Mm,
you
mm.
can't find labs, and there's not enough roads, you can't move anywhere,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just but that stuff is you know you need to start putting the legislation in place now So that in a few years' time, you can start to have planning. So that in 5 years' time, you're building the stuff.
Basic infrastructure, basic
Yeah.
infrastructure. So one of the things that I've heard people talking about is how, we've got this big shift to the right in the rest of Europe, and the UK is interestingly just elected a Labour government. And I'm thinking back to what you were just saying, that we were noting on that the Conservatives had a massive landslide only a couple of years ago, and the UK, it seems, we are able to go through these, partly because we've had so many elections in the last decade, a landslide in one direction, a landslide in the other direction. Things can move backwards and forwards. I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy that there can be movement in different directions. Even if we have had the Conservatives in power for the last 14 years, there is never the sense that it stagnates on one side or the other. There's never a sense that it is so far to the extreme in one direction or the other. I mean, we have a far, we've got Reform Party, whatever, in the UK, but it's not so far to the right as it is in, say, the US, or we're not talking about the National Front. I think it's going to be interesting seeing that there is suddenly, we're talking about Italy having a far right government, potentially France, I think the Netherlands. There's a couple of countries now. And then if we end up with Trump in the US, it's going to be a really interesting landscape in 6 months' time.
Yeah. Well,
And the
I mean,
UK
the
is no
thing,
longer in the EU. I think that's it's going to be a weird position for the UK to be in.
yeah, well, it's the thing for me about lots of these far right things is how long they will last.
Mm.
Because certainly in Europe, generally, I mean, ignore Hungary. Hungary is an outlier for this. But
Well, is Hungary going to be an outlier? That's the thing. I think it's optimistic to keep dismissing. Once you've got a whole bunch of them, are they going to be outliers?
no, but I was going to say it from a different point of view that
Mm,
Germany and Italy and France and these countries, they've had extremist parties before, and
mm,
they tend not to last very long. They
mm,
tend to revert to the center pretty quickly. Um, Hungary is different. I think because it's a younger democracy, it's only it's only a couple of decades since it,
mm, mm.
a few decades since it left the Soviet Union. Um, I mean, you say that though, but then I suppose France was France had some horrible stuff from the Second World War. So maybe I won't be optimistic here,
Yeah.
but I like to think that because generally what with lots of the people populists, they promise the moon on a stick. They say,
Mm,
oh, it's just easy. You just need to back the
mm,
foreigners or do
mm,
this thing,
mm,
whatever it is, or the communists will be the other side. Oh, we just need to tax the rich more. We just need to do these things.
mm, mm.
And they very quickly realized it doesn't work. A bit like Liz Truss did. She came in as an extremist and said, "Oh, it's easy. You just need to do this to come in." And within 45 days,
Sure.
she's out.
But I think, I'm interested. I don't know if you've heard yet the conversation I was having with the two Italians, Piero and Federica, in my last episode. But they had some really interesting stuff to say. I mean, they've been Italy's had this far right prime minister for a while now, and this sense of the once the balance shifts and there are more countries that the balance shifts in Europe as a whole, and there are more and more countries who have elected leaders on that side. I think there is a sort of moment where the confidence is there. And I think it will be interesting to see how a competent Labour government will be able to respond to a Europe
Yeah,
that is starting to become less what we're used to, which is something that, okay, people complain about it, but it's actually very stable. I've always had a lot
yeah,
of respect for the European Union, but if the European Union starts to become something that wobbles, then I'm interested to see how someone who I do have a lot of respect for, like Starmer, because of his competence, right? And I do, he has the most boring voice in the world, but he seems like a very honorable person, right? I'm
And
interested.
also, he's got a history. Given he
Yeah,
got to lead a very major department at the age of 40,
right.
he's good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm interested to see maybe he is going to be a really good person to be in place if we end up with
Yeah,
something like Trump,
yeah.
fascism in the
But
US and a
but
growing far right in Europe.
but you look at someone like Poland, which has they've had a far right government for a number of years, and despite
But I,
and that's
I'm but I'm
this is
talking
the thing.
about I'm talking about a different thing. I'm not talking about one or two countries. I'm talking about if we start to get a a majority
Yeah,
or a
but
preponderance of.
yeah,
That's
but
different from like
what I'm
one.
hopeful for,
Yeah.
but my wife always points out to me, I've been optimistic about a few things and then been
Mm,
horribly wrong. But
yeah.
something like Poland, which despite all the barriers that were put in front, the
Mm,
opposition won,
mm,
and the right with really the far right guys got kicked out in Poland, and now they're having all
mm,
this trouble. I think it's a bit like you see in the US where things are a lot more politicized in the US than they are in the UK. So the judiciary in the UK and the civil service in the UK is independent and is fiercely so. So it's
yeah.
very, if you had a far right or far left government in the UK, it would be very hard to get past some of those
Mm,
institutional barriers to
yeah.
entrench it to the point where you can start to gerrymander things. You can,
Yeah.
as example, the election we just had in the UK, we've had all the boundary changes.
Mm,
The
mm,
boundary
mm.
changes in the UK are done by a completely independent body. So by
Yeah. Yeah.
statute, it's
Yeah.
set up that said this is what the rules are. You need to go to town. People didn't like it, but the mandate for that independent body is to make sure that
Mm,
each of
mm.
the constituencies is fair
Yeah.
and roughly the same size and follows
Which is what it's
a
meant to be in the US,
yeah
but of course it's
yeah
not.
but but
Right.
but but
Right.
it's
But
not
of course it's not.
the US has massive gerrymandering.
Oh, completely.
Whereas
It's completely.
whereas the UK,
But the US.
the legislation says they have to follow
Yeah. Yeah.
sensible boundaries.
Yeah.
You can't. They have to follow.
But that's like
Wherever possible.
that's small beans. I mean, the level to which the US system, I always think of it as like white collar corruption. This is what I've started to think about it through doing this project, right? It's the difference between obvious corruption like the mafia, right? In Italy, everyone talks about Italian politics as being corrupt, or a place where there's obvious ballot box stuffing. But in the US, I always think of it as like white collar corruption. We call it like campaign donations, right?
Yeah.
Or the way that it's written into law, the way that boundaries between congressional districts are obviously profoundly unfair, the way it's set up. It's obviously the way the system is devised is unfair, let's say. It's obviously corrupt, right? But it's written into law to be corrupt and to be it's like that systematic racism, systematic discrimination. And now when you have someone who comes along and doesn't care about doing the wink dog whistle thing, but just out and out says, "Oh yeah, I'll take the bribe," kind of thing, it shows up that the white collar corruption is actually just all corruption. And that is when the seemingly polite inequalities just all break down. And now we just have out and out undermining of democracy completely. So I think we're in a weird place in the US. And to compare it to the UK, but I don't know. I have lots of other thoughts, but I'm getting a bit rambly here. But but I think one of the things that I like your analogy thinking about Stammer as the basic thing that people are looking for is competence, because this is something I'm seeing more and more in my different interviews with people, right? The opposite of corruption is competence. The opposite of despair in democracy is a sense of people who are able to actually just do basic boring things like infrastructure. Because, the thing I hear time and time again is it doesn't matter how much you trust the electoral process. If you believe the people you're electing are never going to do anything, either because they don't care or because they can't, then you don't have any faith in democracy and you don't really have a working society.
Yeah.
So you can have the fairest, most well thought out, most sensible electoral system in the world, but if the people you're electing fundamentally can't do anything or won't do anything competent, then it doesn't matter, right?
Well, yeah, because I think the thing about the UK one is, the Conservative Party had a massive majority,
Mm.
and it is not that the system didn't allow them to get things done; it's that they didn't allow get. And
Mm.
that's why. But I think your point about people just feel despair because everyone's going, oh, they're all useless, they're all terrible, and they're not.
Mm. Exactly.
But I've never thought all politicians are evil, all politicians are terrible, they're all just
No.
in together. There are some who are,
Mm.
but
Mm.
most aren't. Most people who are politicians do a very hard job that's not particularly well paid compared to what their friends are probably earning to get a lot of abuse because they want to get things done better.
But this is the
Um,
thing that I've realized is actually, the more I've talked to people, is a unique thing about the UK, is that I hadn't realized how unusual it is that our politicians in the UK, we talk to them at the local level. Like, when politicians have like clinics and stuff,
yeah,
and you go and you say, "Oh, my neighbours are not putting
yeah,
their bins out on time," or "I think that we should have planning permission to do this, so and this." That doesn't happen elsewhere. Like, that's really unusual. The idea that you have direct access to your MP and can go and ask them for stuff and complain
yeah.
about
But
stuff.
but actually, that's only really a thing that's coming in the last 10, 20 years, and is actually a bit of a problem with the fact that we have a very centralized system in the UK.
Mm, mm.
So actually, the things that people are normally complaining about is stuff your council should be dealing with. So don't put
But
your
even having,
MP
but here,
should,
John, even having a council, having
yeah,
anybody, having any branch of public service, any bureaucrat, any member, like a human being that's part of the civil service, whether that's your MP or a council member or a person sitting in office, who you can go to as a human and say, I have a distressing problem. I would like some help. That is something that's a novelty, right? And that is something I think we don't realize that we have in the UK as a novelty until you look elsewhere and realize what you would do if you didn't have it. Like the level of despair you feel as an individual if you have nobody on your side and you feel that society has utterly abandoned you. Like the people I work with in my day job as a therapist who just have nobody to go to. Whereas I keep wanting to say, can't you go to your MP? And I'm like, no, they can't. Like
and
I see the lack of it, right? I see like, can't you go to the council and complain? No, of course you can't, because there's no such thing, right? It's and that I think that's the level of competence, right? That's the level of there is something that works
yeah,
versus
and I
something
think
that's not
that's the thing
works.
that over the last couple of years that people have noticed has got, so you can
And
write to your MP, but
austerity
it's
can
things like,
wear it away, right?
yeah, and that, but it's not the MP, but it's things like, I want to see my doctor. So you hear about the complaints we had this
Yes.
election, but you can't see the doctor, and if you do, they're
Yeah.
too busy, and you've got to,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
I'm currently on a waiting list for something for a health thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not particularly important, but first of all, I didn't bother going to see the doctor. I knew I'd be on a wait list, and now I've been on the wait list for what, probably 4 months so far, and
Yeah.
every now and
Yeah.
again I get a text message going, "Yeah, don't worry, you're still on the queue, but we
Yeah.
get around
Yeah.
to it in
Yeah.
about 9 months." And thankfully, in my case, it's just something that I'm being
It's
nagged
minor.
by my wife that I should see the doctor about, and they've done
Yeah,
some tests, and
yeah,
it's fine,
yeah.
which is why I'm on the list where it's just. But I mean, I had I had a thing where I hurt my I can't remember I think I hurt my ankle, so I went got on the physio list,
Mm.
and by the time I got round to seeing the physio, my ankle was better, but I'd hurt my knee instead. But it's like, oh,
Yeah,
just happened to be I'd hurt my knee 9 months after I'd hurt my ankle, so I could see a physio about it.
yeah,
The
yeah,
fact
yeah.
that to sit there for 9 months waiting to see,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and again, it comes down to that competence thing of like, the government just passed going, oh, there's all these people on sick notes, and why are so many people not working? They're not working because if you're doing a physical job and you've hurt yourself
Yeah.
and you need an operation on your back and you've got to wait
For
two
9 months,
years,
yeah, or 2 years. Yeah, yeah.
and you can't do your job for 2 years and you're on the sick for 2 years, and
Mm.
at the end of that, trying to get back to a job when you
Yeah,
spent 2 years in pain and on drugs and other
yeah,
physio,
yeah, yeah.
and your health has deteriorated because of it because you put weight on and it's got worse,
Mm,
and
mm, mm.
and then you wonder why the economy is doing badly.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
and
It's
that's
just,
that's that basic competence thing of and I think it was why when you looked at why they were going to get annihilated. I was listening to an article. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Alistair Campbell saying, when you come up for re-election, you say three things, which is, one, things are getting better. Aren't we doing well? Two, we're competent. Look how got a good job we do.
mm,
Or
mm,
it's like,
mm.
you know, we're better than the other guys that we're in. Well, things have got worse. You're all incompetent, and they look like they're quite sensible. Oh,
Yeah,
look, you got annihilated.
yeah.
So
Well, tell me, what would you say the general mood of things has been recently? Like, what is the mood of the country? Like, the last maybe
a
six
lot.
months and
It's
now.
even just like the last few years. I think it's people are just getting weary about stuff.
Mm, mm, mm,
Your point about is people talk about potholes. Why do potholes matter?
mm, mm.
Is because it's a symbol of the fact that someone's not doing the job properly.
Right, right, right.
Because
Yeah.
that's just, you've got to go around with a truck and fill a hole in. And if you're sitting there and you can see that each year the roads are
Mm,
getting worse, the holes are
mm,
getting bigger,
mm,
it's
mm.
taking long, literally the holes are, you're driving around town, you're joking with people like, oh yeah, that corner, oh yeah, there's that hole there, isn't there? But it's been there for 3 months, and as part of your drive to slow down as you come around this corner because there's been a hole there for so long.
Mm,
And
mm.
then I went around recently, and they filled a couple of the holes in. It's like, wow,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's this amazing thing that this hole that I've looked at for a year in the road
Mm,
is
mm.
suddenly filled in. I mean, they did it a
Yeah.
bit too late. They did it, 2 days after, the day after the election, not a
Yeah,
week
yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But um, and it's that thing of just you can see the waiting list for doctors are getting worse. If you try and go see the dentist, you can't do it.
Mm,
Um, if you've got a kid with special educational needs, there's years waiting list to get
mm, mm,
appointments. Yeah, I've got one of the women in my team at work. Her kid's got quite a lot of additional needs, and just the amount of time and effort she's got to go into to get stuff done for it.
mm, mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
and that's I think that's the thing. Just that thing of you're sitting there going, is life better?
Mm,
Um, my mortgage has gone up, inflation's bad. Um, I can see more potholes in the road. I can see
mm,
the schools complaining the fact that they don't have enough stuff and
mm,
they don't have money to to buy books, all these kind of things. You go, well, these are just basic things that could be done better.
and the
Um,
way you
and,
and the way you fight to fix those is by voting. By
yeah,
by voting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's that thing where it's when you're seeing all of that, and then you can see the Tories because they can't talk to that because they know people, so then they bang on about culture war stuff instead,
Right,
which
right,
isn't
right.
really a British thing. We generally we don't care. We don't want to be dragged into bullshit like that. And so
Just as a side note, like nobody really understands why the UK is so backward on trans rights. Like, is it just JK Rowling? Like, what the fuck? Like, why is
but
the
it's not.
UK behind that as opposed to the US?
No,
Like,
no, no, it's not. It's just
what?
there's so
Like
Well, yeah,
it's still weird to me, and I've like gone and looked into this because I was like, I did a whole little deep dive into this at one point because why just generally even like the liberal side of feminists is so much more weirdly backwards about
but
turfiness
I'm not
than
sure if they are. I just think
oh
is
no
there's some people.
there's more like the general mainstream is more behind than the US on
I'm
transgender rights, and that's weird.
I'm really not sure whether it is. And I say
Okay,
this
I'm
as
gonna say
with
this with kindness from the US perspective. The UK looks weird, and
no
people
no no
comment on
no
it.
no. It might look weird, but I think it's because the people who care are the anti-trans people, and they're very loud.
But they also
But
like until recently, there were a bunch of them were major columnists in the Guardian. Like
yeah, no no
they
no no
finally
no no
shut
exactly.
them down, but that was
Yeah,
only about
but
5 years ago.
but that's what I mean. But the people who are loud
Mm,
are anti-trans
mm,
because it's
mm,
not particularly British to be loud and
mm,
showy about
mm,
these things.
mm, mm,
And for some people, they really care and they're very loud. But I say this, the kid who recently came out as trans, nobody gives a shit.
mm,
No one
mm,
cares. Um, and it was this thing where, me having, being a bit older,
mm,
I had this whole, but I was worried when my
mm,
kid came out
mm, mm,
about what the impact would be. And I was talking to a friend of mine from the rowing club who's a bit older than
mm,
me, and his
mm.
kids of a similar age to my kid. And he was sitting down to tell his kids it's all right. And he planned in his head, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Or what to answer with any questions? He sat down. He said, well, to his boys, well, boys, so so and so, you know, was this now wants to be this, and he was ready for the question. "Oh, okay, that's fine.
I mean, the kids are all
But
fine about it.
no, but it's not even the kids. All of my friends,
Yeah.
all the people I know, everyone,
It's all
you know,
it's all the old people.
no, but it's not even the old people. I tell older people, all my older friends I've got friends in their 60s and their 70s, and they all, so it's one of these things because, it's my hobbies with the rowing club.
Yeah,
I've got lots of people from lots of different backgrounds, all different age.
yeah, yeah.
None of them care.
Right, 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 right.
Literally none of them.
It's just the media. Yeah,
It's not, there's a few loud people
yeah, yeah.
who
Well, that's
want to
reassuring.
care about it.
That's
But like,
reassuring.
it might, and it's one of these things I'm always careful because I live in a little bubble in Cambridge and it's very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah.
But we have had absolutely no issues with
Mm,
my kid coming out trans at
okay.
all
Yeah,
from
yeah,
anyone.
yeah.
The school is perfect. The school went, we said, oh, kid wants to be known as this now and use these pronouns. Fine. Okay. We changed
Yeah,
it on the system.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anything you want to do to support you? No, it's fine. Go at the rowing club. Oh, which squad do you want to row with? That's fine.
Okay. Yeah,
Tell friends. All of my friends use the correct pronouns.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everybody, but
That's
there's a
fantastic.
few loud assholes out there
Mm, mm.
who everyone looks at and goes, "What they bang on about?"
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's that thing about again this competence and moderation. That's what
Mm,
you want, and I think that's part of the reason when you look at again talk because working with the rowing being at the rowing club, I got people lots of people around. There's friends of mine who are historically very Tory.
mm,
And if you imagine what a Tory would be,
mm,
white public school boys, they've got jobs in the city, all this kind of
mm,
stuff.
mm, mm.
They despise the Tories. They despise the current lot of Tories because the
Really?
sort of
Yeah,
Tory they are,
yeah,
the sort of Tory probably somebody like me should be.
yeah,
I'm a white, public school educated
yeah,
CFO of a tech company.
yeah, yeah.
I wear red trousers with brogues, and I wear red trousers with brogues in a non-ironic manner, and I have blazers and bow ties and stuff like that. And I go out in public wearing them, and the Tories repulse me.
Mm,
And my
mm, mm.
friends who look like me and sound like me, they're repulsed by them as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Because you don't want all this cultural bullshit.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want that. We've got gay friends, we've got trans friends, we've got people who are like, we got family members who can't move here because immigration rules they got in.
Mm, mm.
You've got
Hello.
doctor's appointments. Yeah, exactly. I always use you as an example
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what, because they do this cultural bullshit.
Because when
It's
Theresa May was Home Secretary, we couldn't
yeah,
afford to move back to the UK
yeah.
because
It stops.
we couldn't
Yeah,
afford the
exactly.
income
Because of their
threshold at that
bullshit,
point. So that's why we're here
you
now.
can't move. You couldn't move back to the UK if you wanted to, or we'd
Mm.
have to find £20,000 for you to do your.
Well, we probably could
It's,
now, but at the time when we had to make the choice, we couldn't
no,
afford it
but
because of
even now. It would
Mm,
cost you about £20,000.
mm, mm, mm. I mean, at this
And
point, we probably could, but at the time when it was the crucial decision
yeah,
of whether we were going to
but
move back
but
or not,
but e
we couldn't
but
afford it.
even
Yeah.
so, for you to have to sit there and go,
I know.
if I
Yeah.
want to move back to the country with my husband and kid,
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
find £20,000.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact it was
Or
easier to stay in the US. I mean, that's the
yeah,
ironic thing. It was
yeah,
easier to for me to get a green card in the US than it was for me to bring my husband to the UK, you
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think
and
I
it's that thing with that culture war stuff of every time,
they
they
well
wheeled
it's
Boris Johnson out on like the Tuesday or Wednesday, and he does his greatest hits of Star, I can't tell the difference between a man and a woman. Mate, that's my kid you're mocking.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Makes it quite angry. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's also like it covers up, like you're saying, for the fact they can't come up with basic
they've got
competence
nothing better
policies
to
that
do.
actually
Yeah,
do affect people's lives. And
yeah.
that's what you talk about instead.
Why should I vote for you when the only thing you've got to say vote for me is mocking my kid?
Exactly, exactly.
It's and if you think I'm angry, you should see my wife.
Yes.
Nick is absolutely, don't piss off Mama Bear because she
Yes.
was quite vicious in
Oh,
how
I
much she
bet.
dislikes them. So,
I bet. I bet.
yeah,
Well, on that note, let's hope things.
anyway, they're gone. Yeah,
Yay!
but I'll tell you what I found again. If you want something interesting, is was listening to
Okay.
Keir Starmer's speech yesterday,
Yeah.
and it was that thing of we're just going to be quietly competent, going to get on the job. And I
Mm,
was listening to the radio this morning, and some guy say, "Oh, I've been a lifelong Tory,"
yeah.
and I heard Keir Starmer's speech. And that's exactly what that could have been anyone I wanted to vote for.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah.
when you look at what conservatism historically has been, it's been quiet competence.
Right. Right. Right.
Doing some things that you might not like, but you're doing it because it's the right thing that's competent.
I think that's
And
all
that's what I
anybody
hope.
wants.
Yeah, and that's what I hope the Tory party goes back to.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
worried they
mm,
might do a Labour and go off into the wilderness and become right-wing nut jobs in the same way that Labour became left-wing nut jobs for a bit.
Well, I think about like I was listening to them talking about, oh well, how do we rebuild the Tory party? We lost votes to reform, the Nigel Farage right wing bit, and I keep thinking, well, why chase that? Why not chase the middle? Why not let reform? Like if you've been, say, for instance, a Conservative Party and you've always included, if there's only ever been one party, then yes, if there have been right wing, somewhat racist people, then presumably they have always had to join you because they haven't had other options. If there is now another option, let them go there. Like, let them go. Let them go. Like, why would you want
Yeah,
them to be included in your party?
but also it's
Why
that thing
chase
that
it?
if
Why
they do
chase it?
chase it that way,
Then
but
they'll lose everybody
the
else. They'll lose
yeah,
everybody
because
else.
what's actually happened, when you look at it, there is now this massive swathe of yellow
Mm,
where all the people who would have voted Tory voted Lib Dem
yeah, yeah.
because Lib Dem's policies are pretty centrist,
Mm, mm, mm.
and you can um again it's that and it's that thing of if you go chase that right wing vote,
Mm.
yes, well there's two things. One, it's like actually you'll never be pure enough. It's like
Right,
Brexit.
exactly. Yeah, totally.
The reason that Brexit hasn't worked out is because it wasn't a pure enough Brexit, but you'll never be right wing enough. And the more you go that way, the less you go away from what the Conservatives are supposed to be,
Mm, mm, mm.
which is pragmatic and competent.
Exactly, exactly.
And if you chase that populism, and you end up like the MAGA
Exactly,
Republicans
exactly. Which
of
is,
power for power's sake.
and it's illogical, makes no
What is it you
sense.
actually want to do with it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dominate.
Yeah,
That's all you
yeah,
want, dominate.
but why? Yeah,
Because
because
that's what
yeah, yeah,
fascism is. It's just about dominating.
yeah. I just don't understand. It's what this is. I struggle to get my head into that point where you can
Because you're a
understand. It's
good
like,
human being. Because you're a good human being.
yeah,
Yeah.
but why go through all that effort and all that tribute and do these things to be in power and then do nothing with it apart from
hmm
make things worse? It
Mm.
just seems pointless.
But you
It's
get to
like,
crush your enemies. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much. This was very interesting. Um, And all to say, it feels very hopeful. It feels like a moment of hopefully
Yeah.
things will get better.
We come talk to me about 8 to 12 years when the current guys who were good have got tired and been replaced by the people who haven't been given a seat then. And then we
Do
go,
you
oh, take
do you think it should be shorter amounts of time that individual governments are in power? I mean, what is this? 14 years for this one. How long was Labour in government beforehand? It was a long time, right?
what, it was
15?
97 to, yeah, a bit less than that, about 12, I think.
12,
Because
and before that it was like
yeah,
18.
yeah, yeah. But it's up to the, the both the current government and the opposition to
Yeah,
sort themselves out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and that, in each case, it's, the 2019 election was a good example, actually. If we'd had a competent
Conservative government
Labour
then.
Party,
Oh, Labour Party.
well,
Oh
no,
my
no, no,
God,
no,
yes.
Labour government, yeah, that was the issue.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's part of, I think the Tories took the wrong view from that. It's like, oh, Boris Johnson won. No, Boris Johnson didn't win. Jeremy Corbyn lost it.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you
Anyway,
so much. Let's
it's been
hope that
lovely.
things get better.
Fingers crossed. I can get a
Yeah.
doctor's appointment in a few months, in a couple of years' time.
Okay, then.